All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Deanna Vidal. For those of you who did not get to meet me yesterday, I'm very glad to be your host for this track and looking forward to getting a chance to talk to a lot of you one-on-one throughout today and tomorrow. As you can see here, Brett and Utz. You aren't Brett or Utz?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Oh, my goodness. So unfortunately, Brett and Utz were sick. So what we have done is we have pulled together the best of from John and Deanna so that you get some insights on new home tech. So we pulled together a presentation last night. High five. And I'm really excited for what we have to show you today. Do you want to talk a little bit about NICE and what they have, because their technology is pretty cool?
I do. So it's too bad that Brett's not here. He was here last night. He's at the hotel right now. I think NICE is probably the home technology company that we've worked most closely with since we launched the Tech Home Builder brand. Some of you have been to the Tech Home Builder Summits. And I hope the content that we present here isn't too redundant with what you might have taken in there, but they have really taken their commitment to the builder to a high level in terms of having a set of services, right? I don't know whether you remember, if you were in the executive forum, I was talking about the process supports that go with the product, but NICE has taken that to the highest level of any of the tech vendors that we work with, and especially the sales, marketing, and merchandise planning piece of home technology. They've got great products. They've assembled, this group of best-in-class brands across the control and AV and infrastructure spectrum, and they play well with other technology companies to help builders put together complete assortments and solutions and to market that stuff and get good sell-through. So, and his team, they've been working so closely with builders for the past 7 years, Brett and his team, and so they're a joy to work with, and they have a good process for determining what's a fit for you as individual builders. And like I said, they've got great scope of products that they make themselves and are capable of making the integrations happen with other manufacturers. And so I highly recommend them as someone to talk to about your home technology needs.
We've got a lot of content to go through. So there's our elephant in the room.
So that's the elephant in the room.
That's the elephant in the room. I didn't mean to match the elephant in the room. I just happened to match the elephant in the room today.
She really wanted the color coordination. And then not everybody is familiar with let's get the cats on the table. So elephant in the room is the looming thing that nobody's talking. Cats on the table are the problems there's vexing little problems that are always scrambling under your feet. And so then you put the cat on the table and you examine that problem. For the purposes of this session at this moment, the elephant and the cat are Utz and Brett. And we'll see if they become representative of something else as we go forward.
Yeah, I could see the resemblance. But what happens if you only have one cat on the table? Is it cats or is it cat? Like, you can have one cat on the table?
Because one cat is not chaotic enough. So we do need another cat. And we welcome contributions of additional cats from our guests and sponsors.
You've obviously never met my grandmother's cat.
I'm not a cat fan, actually. Okay, so let's do home tech at kind of a high level. The Tech Home, and that's our brand on the home technology side of things. It's big, it's broad, it's in demand. So I think definitions are really important because sometimes when we talk about tech, people are just thinking about this top group of products in the electronics arena as technology. And our conception at AE Ventures has been for many years much broader than that, incorporating all these other subsystems, the electrical system, the lighting, the HVAC, indoor air quality, technology in the kitchen, bath, and laundry room, smart water, probably an increasingly important category, the outdoor living tech. So when I say it's broad, it covers this taxonomy, and it's not just the electronics piece. So I think that's an important thing for you all to remember as you think through your home technology merchandise assortments.
Real quick, you call these the Big Seven, right?
That's not the Big Seven, no.
No?
The Big
Okay.
Seven was just kind of emerging and surging
Okay.
applications, but I'll go back here.
Yeah, can we go back to that real quick?
Yeah.
Because as we look at these 7 categories, some of them the consumer understands better than others. And so they're on a different part of the knowledge scale. So if you think of like a big bell curve, some consumers, well, I'll do it in reverse for you. So some consumers are over here and understanding certain parts of this, and some of them are here. So if you really talk about like the lighting and electrical tech, they're further along in that bell curve of understanding what's going on, versus if you look at the high performance and building components, they're less educated on it. So when we talk about smart tech, understanding where the consumer sits with their knowledge with it varies depending on which topic we're talking about. Like HVAC might not necessarily be one they fully understand.
So, and these 3 slides that I'm going to walk through are part of what I call merchandise perspectives, right? And there are ways for you to think through your home technology assortment. So one way is to think about product categories. That's like you're a department store, right? And like, which of these categories am I going to play in? Another way, which is more consumer-centric, is to think through the benefits that are delivered by home technology. So we've identified 7 central benefits. Sometimes people call all of this stuff smart home, but I think that there are particular applications that have to do with smarts, right? And it's typically about when there are macros or multiple functions are triggered, or there is something up in the cloud that's monitoring and making series of events to happen with the technology in a house that's not controlled and directed specifically by the user. So that's our definition of smarts, and we've got a merchandise and marketing guide where you can read through this stuff in detail, but we've identified these 7 central benefits. Smart, healthy to us is one of the technology benefits, one of the benefits that can be delivered by technology. Connected, and that's devices connected within the house, but it's also connection to the wide area network and family and friends outside of the house. The green piece is something that we can deliver on with technology. Entertaining has always been a strong part, and that's the AV consumption side of things, but it's also entertaining guests and such. And then safe is the security and life safety aspects. And the one that we've added recently in the last 2 or 3 years is productive, right? Because of work from home.
That makes sense. So you mentioned a resource. How can they get that resource?
They can email me.
Okay.
They can email
John.
anybody on our staff, and we'll get you the merchant market. Lee, who you've worked with as guests, or Jess on the sponsor side of things, we can get you to the link. It's a long and windy document. It has, and it's about to go through a redo, but we've got like agendas and strategies for meeting as a team, working with your trade partners to develop your assortments and think through these things. But this is one of our merchandise perspectives. So there's a lot of these. See, I'm just showing you. These, we've described every one of these. And I'll get to my next slide. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you pull a deck together. Room by room is another way to look at your technology, right? Because rooms are designed to have a specific purpose, and we have technology that can enhance the purpose of those rooms. So, and it's another way to actually present technology to buyers, right? Benefits can be one way, and you can ask about whether those benefits are important to somebody, and then drill down to the technology that delivers. But room by room is another way, and a lot of buyers look at a home as a collection of rooms. So,
Well, in the first way of looking at it, you're really trying to get around their mindset. So if security is the most important thing to the consumer that you're talking to, then that might be where you want to lean in. If health is something that the consumer's most important to them, that might be how you lean into your messaging. Versus when you go room by room, you're really talking about the applications of how that gets looped in. So if you pair these two together and sort of start to understand what makes my consumer move, what motivates them, what is the thing that keeps them awake at night? Is it their security? Is it their health? Is it their sustainability, their impact on the environment? Is it their kids? What is it that's in that mind of the consumer that's going to help them move and make a decision? And then take these rooms and use them as an example on how to integrate it.
Yeah, I think, these two, the central benefits and the room by room are the most consumer-centric ways to think through your technology offers and packaging and to explore with customers. But the taxonomy, when you have an enthusiast buyer, they know what categories they want to be in. Sometimes that is, and it's typically going to be the male part of the buying team or the male buyer who's going to have deep knowledge of those product categories, and they may want to go through a product taxonomy because they've already know what features they're looking for. And there are a lot of experienced users out there now.
Especially when it comes to the connection piece of it, because everybody's tried to make their own connection in some way.
So this is your slide.
Yeah, so we've done a couple of consumer surveys around smart home tech, around health and wellness, around sustainability that I think apply to some of these pieces. And what we found when we asked consumers, so this was somebody who already had at least one smart tech product in their home is who we asked this. What are the top 3 smart home products they would pay to include in their home? And what we found is that video doorbells and smart thermostats are really the gateway drug to technology adoption in the home. So if they want those 2 things or one of those 2 things, that's the first step for them feeling comfortable and what is happening as far as letting smart tech do things for them. Instead of them having to adjust the thermostat, instead of them having to check the doorbell. These are really convenient smart tech pieces that people can wrap their head around why there is value there. And so, if we look down sort of like the next top 2, I just want to point out, everybody says and feels that Alexa and Siri and Google Home are really the gateways there. But we're only seeing about 27% that are saying, like, I would pay more to have these integrated into my home versus a video doorbell already being installed. We can go to the next slide.
So this is a look at those big 7 applications, right? Surging and emerging, right? And so some of them are newer, some of them have been around and just really have taken hold. So this is probably, among high volume builders, the most typical standard offer, right?
So there's, in this wheel here, there's video doorbell, additional cameras, alarm systems, keyless locks, connected thermostat, lighting control, and a hybrid home network. How many of you are already doing at least one of these things in your homes? It's about almost, let's say like 80% is what I'm seeing. So around 80%. How many people are doing all of these? How many people are doing half? All right, so we're already on the adoption curve here because that's about what I expected.
Yeah, and I just provided a little bit of industry perspective on this. So I started working on home automation in the mid to late 80s, actually. And that was, it wasn't the ground floor. We were actually pouring the foundation of the industry. Nothing worked, right? So it was like a lot of big pipe dreams from big companies and industry organizations like NAHB and the Consumer Technology Association, but a lot of things really just didn't work, is the honest truth. But and I was working on security trade shows, and we're like, oh, the security guys, they're a natural fit to do home automation, and they just wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't do it, and it's because their business model is based on recurring revenue. Remember, Tim was talking about recurring revenue for you all on the lifetime value side of things. So until ADT, which is the 800-pound gorilla in home security, figured out how to get incremental, additional recurring revenue, security guys didn't want to do automation. But what also happened is, same time frame, all the cable companies were adding security monitoring because they were losing subscribers for cable TV.
Yeah.
They became internet providers, and they decided they would do security. They jumped into automation as well. So now we have multi-billion-dollar companies flooding the airwaves with awareness of this smart home security functionality. And that's why it's really become kind of a table stakes technology, I think.
You don't have a gorilla stuffed animal?
We'll work on
We got to work on that. We
assortment.
got to work
We
on
need
that.
another
All right.
cat
I
and
got
a
a whole
gorilla.
list. I got a whole list of animals you need to have next year.
But an 800-pound gorilla, that's a big stuffed animal.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it makes an impact. All right. So when we ask consumers what are the most important smart tech solutions that you provide for your home, increasing home security was the number one by far. Around 50% of consumers who already are doing some sort of smart tech, it's really around increasing home security and having that feeling in their room. That might mean different things to different consumers as they're along their technology adoption platform, but the next one down is being able to control the whole home remotely. And so, but you have to see what a big gap there is. That's 20% of the respondents. And so if we start with what does home mean? And it's a place that we need to feel safe and secure. And so if technology can help them adopt, and if they can adopt technology that helps them feel more safe in their home, it makes sense why this is number one.
Yeah. I think the second bar, and I'll go back to the industry history thing.
Yeah.
What happened in 2009 with ADT Pulse was phone-based. So this company called iControl provided the ingredient technology that allowed smartphones to be the remote user interface to the system. Before that, people were like calling dial-up lines to punch in stuff. So that was a big sea change too for smart home security.
And then when we talk about smart tech products that integrate throughout the whole home, they're leaning in towards, so we just said like for each of these, what is worth paying more for? So not just necessarily like what do you want, but like what do you want to pay for? And whole home security and whole house internet connectivity were the top two choices that consumers are willing to pay more for. And trying to have an entire home internet system that is connected. And so, you know, if I had to get the pods that extend in my house because my husband would lose his mind.
Wireless access points?
Yeah,
Okay.
just like having access to the internet throughout, right?
Sure.
When we first moved into our home, my husband would be downstairs watching TV. He'd be watching a game, and he'd be trying to chat with his friends, and he'd lose. He could watch the game live, but he couldn't text with his friends because we had terrible cell service. And he just was like, why can't I text? Da, 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 da. So we had to put one of the pods in so he could get on Wi-Fi on his phone and talk, because that was really important to him, that he had that connection throughout the house and that he didn't have to go upstairs to text everybody and run back down and miss a play. So that's one way. But the other way is through this whole house security. And with whole home security, they are willing to pay more. And we are trying to dig into now what that dollar amount is. So we're doing a follow-up survey on that so that we can start to apply the dollars.
But there's all different levels you could play in on this, right? And even starter homes can have a professional security system at not a terribly high cost.
And that's the thing, is that because we're so far along in the adoption of this, most people understand it and there's value applied to it already, and the industry's starting to figure it out.
Yep. So I'm not going to talk at this, but if anybody's interested in my crackpot ideas on what would be good, better, best in this category, I've laid them out here for you. I do consider the video doorbell kind of table stakes because it provides so much functionality, and to me, the keyless lock's got to go with that, right? Because that's a huge convenience factor, and not having to drive back to your house to let house guests who are coming,
The dog walker,
or
whoever.
whatever. It's just that's table stake stuff. Connected thermostat. We all know you can save energy and have more convenience and comfort with that. And then, importantly, on the network piece, don't settle for your cable provider level of Wi-Fi connectivity, because you're going to get the situations that Deanna's talking about. You do need a more robust network than that. If the buyer is going to expand their footprint of technology over time, a lot of that is going to be dependent on quality Wi-Fi distribution. So, work with an integrator to have something that's at a higher level in terms of the coverage of your Wi-Fi.
Well, and I've sat with clients before and said, we need to talk about where and how your tech closet sits within your house, because we need to optimize. Nobody plugs in anymore. It's very rare that people plug in. To where can you place things so that you can optimize your Wi-Fi? Because in all of the smart tech that we're going to talk about today, if you don't have your house set up so that all of these things can integrate, you're stopping yourself really early. And so sitting and looking at your floor plan and how that all integrates early on before you get those approved is important.
I think that in the better category, I would highlight the basic lighting control. And it is an extension of the security piece, so that when you're arriving to your house, if you can remotely trigger exterior lights and you have path of access, path of egress lighting that's remote controllable, that's a tangible benefit that a lot of people are looking for.
Any questions so far before we keep moving?
Okay. So this is, I've kind of been on a flywheel, as the staff knows. We have I have personal flywheels for the people on our staff on what their duties are. I've just been on like a flywheel. I promise 2023 I'm going to do no flywheels. I'm going to use different smart art. But this is you remember, you're going to hold me to that, Jess? Okay. Well, maybe just the first quarter we'll do some flywheels. So the health and wellness piece, is getting a lot of promotion. I still think we're early in terms of folks figuring out which benefits they want to deliver and what their merchandise assortments are there. Most of the focus has been on the 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, or 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock tablets there, air, water, and light. But there's a bigger way to look at this, which is the additional tablets that I've added in here. We're still a long way from good air quality in new homes. I mean, what I hear from industry is that 10% of new homes are really being built with the appropriate ventilation and air quality. And I don't think that's about the self-interest side of things from the vendors. I just think that's the reality. We all know we build a tighter envelope now to save energy, but that is limiting the fresh air exchange. And so if we're not putting ERVs and HRVs in these built tight houses, we're going to have air quality issues. And it's that basic. And then there's a whole other set of technologies, whether it's the humidification, and April Air talks about radon. Radon is a gas. I think we think of it as like nuclear rays, gamma rays coming, but it's a gas, right? And so that's another air quality piece that can be tended to. So it's gotten a decent amount of attention, but we're not doing much about it. Water is another area of opportunity. And
Water is tricky.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about light down the line, but lighting has an incredible effect on your wellness, your sleep patterns, et cetera, and we have new technology that matches the light, the artificial light in your house to what's going on outside so that your biorhythms are in sync and you feel better. I think sound is a missed category. The acoustics in a space can be horribly disconcerting mentally. I mean, I've been in houses where the acoustics are so bad in a great room, you can't even have a conversation, right?
That's true.
And maybe it's just my middle-aged male ears, but I find that distressing, actually.
No, it definitely plays a factor. And now that we're trying to ask our homes to do so much more for us, being able to have some sort of sound and sound privacy in the home allows for those multiple functions to all happen at the same time. And so when we talk to consumers about health and wellness, what we found is that around 60 to 70% of them are taking actions to improve their physical health, and around the same percentage are also taking actions to improve their mental health. And I can get you the exact numbers if you want. We have a whole report on health and wellness that I can send to you. Just send me an email. But all of these pieces on this wheel factor into it. And the one that we spend the most time doing, even if it's unconscious, is sleep. And making sure that you're designing for restful sleep sometimes includes what's going on with the sound and the light in the room. And so being able to think through that and what that means, all of these pieces have to come together for somebody to truly feel like they are taking care of themselves physically and mentally.
Yeah, sleep is a big one. And there's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I love the federal government because of the statistics. That's what I love about the home building industry. There's no industry that has more statistics, right?
Got a lot.
I like baseball. I like the home building industry. It's just lots of numbers and columns to look at. But they do the American Time Use Survey annually. Mm-hmm. And you can analyze it, and the number one thing that people do at home is sleep from a time use perspective. But is anybody addressing sleep in any way with technology or otherwise in their houses? I mean, it's the number one thing they do. The number two thing they do is, we don't know about the work piece in the wake of COVID and all the work from home changes, so that may be number two now.
I have some stats on that later. It's not a time, but
number two is watching TV.
Yeah.
And you builders have really not offered TVs much because the margin from your trade contract, there's not enough margin to share, so they don't really make it into your models and such. But it's when people are awake, it's the number one thing they do. So we want to show that. We want to give them that experience because that's part of the way they enjoy their home. So we're kind of missing an opportunity there.
Some time with entertainment. So when we talk to consumers about health, this is from our most recent survey that's actually not published yet. So kudos to Megan. She's not in the room, but she pulled this together for us and got all the data together for us. Most consumers believe that the best way to get healthy indoor air is through a filtration system. This is how they feel. And the second is through fresh airs that open doors and windows. I don't have the data from this from 2018 and 19. We didn't ask the question then. But I would guess that those two would have flip-flopped in the past 2 to 3 years. So 52%, that's over half, are thinking about air filtration systems. And I do think I have it later, but I'll talk about it now. They understand some of the air filtration systems and are aware of them more so than others.
So they know they want fresh air. There's a problem with opening doors and windows, which is the temperature outside or the humidity outside not being the right thing for the inside of the house. So that gets us back to HRVs and ERVs. I'm going to be shilling ERVs and HRVs.
That's where it comes to a lot of education is still, and I've talked to some of the leading healthy home builders around the country. I've spent a lot of time trying to understand their business and how they do it. And the number one thing that I've been told from them is they have to figure out post-sell how to continue to engage with the consumer, to educate them on how to operate their home and maintain the basics in their home. So much so that I've heard of them. Thrive Home Builders in Denver does this. When they close on a home, what they do is they go and they bring this giant box that has all of anything that they need to do for that home for the year. Air filtrations, changing a light bulb, changing this, checking water monitors. It's this giant box of everything, and they put it in their garage. And then they say, we're gonna come on 6-month anniversary and your 1-year anniversary, and just leave this box here, and we're gonna replace all your filters. We're gonna show you what all those filters are. We're gonna crawl into it. I'm gonna show you how to replace this, and then we're gonna set a timer on it, and it helps them educate the consumer, so much so that they've started their own business. They have a secondary business that helps educate the consumer post-sell on how to take care of their healthy, smart home. And that's the level that they had to get to in their market so that the consumers are like, okay, you sold me, I want this healthy, high performance home, this smart home. But then they had to go to the next level to show them how to maintain it and to use it, because if they're not changing the air filters, if they're not checking on these things, if they're not doing the basic maintenance, the home's performance actually drops over time. And so they decided that that's how they were going to get around that.
I think it's tough to market some of these things because they're invisible.
Yeah.
Air is invisible, sound is invisible, and we really rely on visual
Water pipes are
merchandising and
invisible.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff's in between the walls or in the basement too. And the industry has done a horrible job on the marketing side of things. I mean, they're going to tell you it's ASHRAE 62.2 compliant on the air, and like, oh, that sells, you know, because everyone's looking for a 62.2 ASHRAE. So we need to hone those messages and make them, you know, more relatable and emotional from a consumer perspective.
So we asked consumers what terms they were most familiar with. The number one was Energy Star. No surprise there. They've been on the market for a really long time. They've got a lot of marketing campaigns. Number two was HEPA filtration systems. And then you'll see way down there all the way to the left, the MERV filtration. Both filtration systems, for some reason, HEPA's done a really good job. HEPA got into airplanes. HEPA got into vacuum cleaners. They started to work with allergists who spend a lot of time telling their patients to get better air filters.
Yeah.
And then the one that really surprised me is around carbon neutral. And think about carbon neutral for a second. If you go onto Google and you search for a flight, what does it tell you? Here's your carbon. Do you want to offset your carbon? There's a lot of awareness around carbon that's coming up along the way. More so than net zero, which has actually been talked about in our industry for a lot longer.
Yeah.
So you can start to see how their knowledge drops off drastically after those.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, home building industry has become too reliant on all these little certification labels that they mean something to us on the inside. They don't mean a ton to people on the outside. And so instead of actually figuring out how to carry forward the benefit message, we rely on these labels that really have low awareness and understanding to them.
Yeah.
So it's just...
But the consumer does value that a third party is telling them that what you've done helps them.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing to think about, is it's not necessarily who did it. It's not necessarily that it is Energy Star certified. It's that there is a third party that looked at this and said, yes, this meets these requirements. And knowing that it's not just, I'm Builder Deanna, and Builder Deanna says that I did all these things, that somebody else is verifying it.
Yep. This is from our friends at April Air. It's just the ventilation, the air purity, the dehumidification and humidification, and the controls. Those are the big four categories on the air quality side of things. And here's, I didn't put this one together, but here's a good, better, best on air, water, and light that you all can review at your leisure.
We're happy to send this slide deck to you. Just let me know.
So, this is another emerging category, and I think when we're starting to get into categories like this, it's important to understand the anatomy of it with a flywheel, of course. So,
Okay, of this flywheel, how many people are doing at least one thing on it? That's a little less than half that's doing it. Which one are you doing that's on this flywheel? Anybody, just yell it out. EV charger? Is that what EV, solar? That seems to be the top two. Batteries, anybody doing battery packs? Backup storage power? Not a standard? All right, I was just curious.
yeah, I think, this is the way to deliver smart, clean, efficient power, right? And with self-generation and understanding that it's going to be a hybrid situation for the long term. Let's not forget about the grid.
Yeah.
The grid is there. The grid is your most cost-effective battery right now, is sending energy back up into the grid when you don't need it, that you're generating yourself on your property and then bringing it down at other times when the rates are lower. And so a lot of times we forget about it because it's not a product, but the grid is an important piece of the overall system. There's a lot of smarts on the distribution and the consumption side of things, and then there are the generators and these different nodes to get the stuff out. But I think this can be helpful for you to understand what a holistic system looks like and where you might want to play.
So when we talk to consumers about their plans to buy a plug-in or hybrid or all-electric vehicle, they don't necessarily have plans to buy one or even necessarily have one right now. Now, this might be surprising to everybody, considering every time you turn on the television, there's another EV vehicle being put on the market and being like slammed, that they're everywhere,
But they're
right?
hard to get. That's
Right?
the problem.
But it's their plans in 3 years.
Yeah.
More than half of the people are not planning to or do not currently have an EV car. Go to the next slide. However, would they want an EV charging station in their home? And more than half say that they would. So what does this tell us? It tells us I might not currently or be planning to buy an electric vehicle, but I know it's going to have value long term, right? So like while it might not be my personal plan, what I haven't asked and what I haven't digged into is it because they think it's going to be resale? Because they do plan to buy it in 3 to 6 years, right? So this just means that that EV charging station does have value to the homeowner, even if their current shorter term plans aren't to necessarily purchase a vehicle.
Yeah. So we did some consulting with a company called Schumacher Electric, they're best known for charging car batteries, traditional combustion car batteries, and race cars too.
Yeah.
But they have a smart connected EV charger. They're integrated with Savant Power and working on other integrations. And we studied, what happens if you get to 2 EVs is you're typically exceeding the power capacity available and 80% of the charging is done at home. You're typically going to exceed the power capacity of a traditional feed to a home, so it's going to drive the need for the solar and storage and the smarts on the distribution. So this is a huge trend. Your buyers are going to want you to play at some level.
And then when we talk to consumers about solar, and we said, how much time would it need to take to repay for solar panels on your home? So that what your power utility bill was being offset by the cost of solar, most expect for it to take less than 5 years to pay off. Depending on the thing, this might or might not be feasible, but a little bit of education around how long it does take for solar to pay off, between 5 to 10 years. Consumers are considering that acceptable, and a lot of this comes into education. I go to the Prius example. When Priuses were first, the first hybrid car on the market, that was really like driving home to the consumer what it meant. And every time you went to shop for one, on the stickers on the windows, this was when people actually still went to the dealership to buy cars, right? They would have these things that says, save $5,000 a year on gas. And they would show the math between the two, right? And like, this is how I feel about solar, is like, save X number of dollars on your utility bill, because all the consumers know that it's not just, we were talking about this earlier this morning, it's not just what I have to pay for my mortgage, I also have to pay my utility bills for my home. And so they understand that their total budget has to balance here. And so if their home does include solar, it does have a value to them.
And a lot of that solar payback, solar at home payback, has not included the payback on the fueling of the car.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's another thing. It's like, now I'm not buying gas, but I'm
Yeah.
sucking power out of so your utility bill is going to go up unless you start self-generating. So
Well, and the federal government has a lot of incentives that they're rolling out now that the consumers are not necessarily fully aware of that could help offset some of those costs as well.
yeah, so we wrote this guide with Schumacher, and we can make this available to you, but it's got good, better, best in there. It's got a kind of EV charging ready level play, which might be the play that some builders want. It's got a basic and then a fully blown, and we've done some of the analysis on the cost payback side of
Fantastic.
things. So that's something that could be helpful.
More resources. I love a good resource.
Here's a grid-based, good, better, best that you all can review at your leisure. We're at 6:37, so I think we need to go faster,
Yeah, let's
right?
keep going.
Are we doing
Rock and
okay?
roll. Work from home. This one, let's just jump right in. We all know that people started working from home more. We did quite a bit of analysis. We worked with the US Census, we worked with our own surveys and a couple other people to try to figure out how many people moved because they could work from home now. And we believe that of the 15 million households that did move in 2020 or 2021, around 10 million of them worked from home. And of those 10 million, 4 million say that the ability for themselves or their spouse or whoever they were co-purchasing or co-living with influenced their decision to move. So that's 4 million people in the United States that moved simply because they could work from home. 4 million. That's a lot of people. Can we go to the next slide, please? And then of those households that worked from home, the 40%, you can see that 21% worked from home and did not work from home during the pandemic. And this is just about what their spouses did. Can we go to the next slide? And then 40% of workers expect to work from home at least one day per week moving forward. And so that's a huge percentage. And this is not necessarily of those 40%. This is just 100% of the United States. 40% of the US think that they're gonna work from home at least one day. If you dig into this, there's around 13% that are gonna work from home exclusively. I'm one of those people. I work from home full time. I just get on planes to come do these types of things. And then you have everybody in between, and that's a big percentage of people, and that is way greater number than it ever was before. So we really need to think about what that means. And then workplace location. And so if you look into the different pieces, so the gray is I did not work from home. The sort of green in the middle is I hybrid work from home, and then work from home exclusively. There's a huge percentage in shift. So 35% of workers are expected to work hybrid. And then the next slide. Oh, here's yours. Nope, go for it.
Well, I just think those are huge numbers.
They're
You've got
giant numbers.
Hybrid and total full-time work from home is 51%.
Yep.
And I think this is one of our themes here the last couple of days is we got to be able to do a better job of speaking to this need, this trend, right?
Well, and
it's not a fad. This is a trend.
If you talk to people who used to go into the office all the time and now they work from home and that they've had this huge life shift, what home means to them is a huge difference now. And my sister's a perfect example of this. She just sold her house last week. And she sold her house because she was convinced that being in there 24/7 was making her sick. And because before she used to go into the office, so she spent 8 hours sleeping a day and 8 hours in the office per day. And she was getting healthy air and all these things at the office. And so it wasn't making her, but her year that she had to work from home, she kept having all these health problems. And she was like, that's it, I'm out. My house is making me sick. I'm not going into the office anymore to offset it. I can't do this. Get me out of my house.
Right.
It means a lot when you're spending 24/7 in your house all day. It means something different.
It does. I mean, in the workplace, we've got building engineers who are looking at indoor air quality and temperature and the productivity of employees. I mean, that stuff doesn't disappear because you're working from home. So if you have bad air quality, you don't have good temperature, you're going to be less productive. And ultimately, maybe the boss isn't there, but the results are the results, right?
Correct.
So I don't know that this is a great smart art display here on the work from home. We should have done a flywheel.
Okay.
But
I'll work with you on the smart art. I got an idea for it.
but I think the complication on work from home from a tech perspective is some of this stuff can be built in. Some of it is what we call in the technology industry, bring your own device. Like people have some of these devices or might buy them at retail or have them and bring them. But having the right infrastructure in terms of the power, you want hardwired, high-speed internet connections. You do want ergonomic mounting of displays. You probably want a backdrop that's professional if you're doing a good amount of video conference, and who isn't.
Well, that's what I was talking about in the executive forum. Storage in the office and how you integrate in the office is very unique compared to the rest of the house. You don't necessarily need room for papers and everything anymore. You need room for ring lights and for cables and for a direct. This is one of the few places in the house where people directly connect in, is wherever they're working from, especially if they're doing a lot of video streaming and video chatting, versus like the rest of the house, everything can be on Wi-Fi. And so thinking about that, and that's what I was talking about with the tech integration within the home, wherever your connector for your cable connection, your Wi-Fi connection, your phone connection is coming into the house, if that can be near where the home office might be or your flex space might be, that's going to really help to sort of make sure they get optimal speed.
I think in your models you want to show this furnished, right? You want to show, even you may not be selling everything there, but you want to show it furnished. And by the way, Best Buy has a builder program, so Best Buy would probably love to be on the back end of all these devices that need to hang in there, and would probably be willing to share commissions for those lead opportunities. And there are other retailers that I think would be interested in it. So, I'm trying to get the tech industry to do a better job of showing you how to do this, having some reference designs. But clearly, this is a room that can win a sale for you, right? So we should be showing great work from home situations. And I think the shade control and the lighting control, when you go from work mode to performance artist on TV mode, is another one that's,
This would be ideal lighting for my home office.
Yeah, well,
I would look fabulous every day on Zoom.
You got to pay the riggers, though. It's not easy.
That's okay.
This is Legrand's making they're here, and they've got a lot of the pieces and parts from an infrastructure perspective. So we've got about 4 or 5 minutes, actually, because they
lied to us?
They lied, yeah.
That
was good,
buffer.
because our theme is 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag at this conference, of whatever you decide that is. But so AV is, it's kind of an oldie, but I've also called this a renaissance. I mean, you have now architectural video, right? You didn't have architectural video. Now you got these frame TVs. And I think almost all of the TV suppliers have something that dual purposes as art. You've had built-in speakers in the ceilings and the walls for a good long time. But let me just walk through, what I think are winners. AV zones versus dedicated theater rooms or media rooms. I think there are some buyers that want that dedicated room, but most of our media consumption these days is we're multitasking, right? Somebody's critically watching something, somebody's not. Somebody's on their phone.
Back to my husband's example. He needs to be on the phone, on his laptop, and watching the TV all at the same time. And that room all needs to support those things, because he's watching the stats on his computer, he's watching the game on the TV, and he's texting his friends on his phone, right? And like all that needs to happen at the same time for it to be the optimal sports watching event for him.
Right, but so to me, if you get out of a dedicated room mindset and you think about a high performance AV zone, it looks great, it sounds great. If I want to be in that zone and be immersed, and once you've had a subwoofer and surround sound, you really can't go back. It's like listening to an AM radio in a car. So think about zones, and there could be multiple zones in houses too. There could be a zone in the owner's suite, there could be a zone in the great room, et cetera. So think zones. There has been a bit of a rebound on the theater room and the media room, and some of that's about get away from work from home, immerse yourself. You can dual purpose the AV stack in the office for entertainment. Multi-room audio is a category I've always loved. I think it's transformative when you just have the music everywhere, and either you have guests or you're walking through the house. So I think that's still a popular application, and you can do anything from simple inexpensive stuff with folks like Sonos, and then you could have invisible sound where nobody even sees the speakers. It comes out of the wall, and it's like you're in a movie and you have the soundtrack of your life there, and it really sounds good now whereas 20 years ago. So that's another thing. And I mentioned the architectural video and outdoor AV is important too.
Well, the outdoor AV is increasing. We're also seeing outdoor everything is increasing right now. People want to spend more time outdoors. So don't forget that wear your plugs outside, and do you have a cable connection outside, because some people do have their TVs outside now. And so just reminding yourself to at least give them the option for those and give them multiple options for where those plugs are, helps extend that living space into the outdoors. So if you're offering an outdoor covered room, 2, 3, or 4 plugs and maybe a cable connection makes a whole lot of sense for this to happen.
Good, better, best. Finally, with 1 minute to spare.
We go to the kitchen. We're going to talk about kitchens and baths later today.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is something that's maybe my pet project. It's like everybody could be their own Julia Child, right? It's like all the smart connected appliances, they need to be in context with a kitchen that's better connected, and it really kind of like a studio or a media intake place as well.
I don't remember the exact number, but of all the Alexas, I think there's like a ridiculous amount of them. They're in kitchens. Yeah. And that's really where they live. And there's a lot of the visual, what are they called? The visual Alexas. I can't remember what they're called, but anyways,
Smart
with the
screens.
with the screen on them.
Yep.
Thank you.
Smart screens.
Those are the ones that really live in the kitchen because people are looking at recipes.
Yep.
And so that's sort of like the gateway, that and the smart refrigerators.
Yep.
Very high adoption rate. People understand it. Consumers understand those things.
Yep.
And so
to me, it's cameras too, though. It's like range hood cameras, and this stuff's available. I'm not making it up. If you want to be Julia Child, you want to do intergenerational recipe sharing and stuff like that, you can. That stuff's here today. We just need to show the consumers the experience, and we really haven't gotten the appliance folks and such to do it. Maybe Samsung's here. You could agitate for them to do it because they got the cameras and the displays and the speakers and the appliances. So,
well, to wrap this up, one thing to think about is how consumers understand these things and what they're looking for. So consumers understand smart fridges. They also don't necessarily want minor conveniences. So yeah, it's nice that my refrigerator can tell me that I'm low on yogurt and that I'm low on milk. That's convenient, but what's really gonna save the day, and these are the ones that I believe you're gonna see more bandwidth happen over the next few years, is things that solve problems that you can't solve for yourself. So water monitoring. That one, you can't see what's happening between your walls, and that might save you a lot. And I know that insurance companies are offsetting this too. Things like you forgot to turn the stove off, a notification around those. Those are life-changing things that can happen. What are some of the worst days in consumers' lives? Their house is flooded, their house catches fire, they burnt something in their stove and their whole house is gonna smell like burnt everything for forever. These are the ones that really change the way that consumers look at smart tech. And so while the lights, switches, and the music control and all these things might make life more enjoyable, and create a whole home experience, the ones that are monitoring the water, the ones that are monitoring the stove, the ones that are monitoring your home security are the ones that really move the needle for them, and that's where their mindset is.
Yep.
Any questions? I think we're probably out of time.
We're fresh out of time. So thank you, Deanna. Thank you, Nice. Brett, we're sorry you're not here. Thank you to Nice.